ends up being the biggest company in the world. And that was the special experience that I was allowed to have when I met Steve Jobs when he was 24 years old. Entrepreneurs have always been kind of my favorite people. The mayor mentioned Walt Disney. Walt Disney was one of my heroes growing up, because I grew up as an art director and a designer, and thought, here's this guy who could draw a mouse and, you know, end up with a giant, amazing business empire that had integrity and had passion. Phil Knight, you know, he started selling shoes out of the back of his car. He wasn't always the giant Nike sports brand that it is everywhere in the world. He was once a little entrepreneur selling shoes out of the back of his car. And Steve Jobs, the classic entrepreneur story, started in a garage. With a guy named Steve Wozniak. The two of them were nerds, they were geeks. Steve Jobs, you probably have read a number of the things about him. You know, he dropped out of college, he audited some classes that kind of informed his intellect, but he was this nerd who loved technology, knew something about technology, hung out with this guy, Steve Wozniak, who really knew a lot about technology. And they invented the first personal computer in a garage. Wozniak was really excited because he could take it to his, you know, electronics personal computer club and show off that his computer could actually do something. The difference between Woz and Steve is Steve looked at it and he said, this is going to change the world. 24 years old, messing around in a garage with technology, and he knew that what they had started, what they had done, was going to be one of the most powerful forces in American history, business history, communications history. You know, if you look in your pocket or your bag, kind of life history in terms of how the whole world will live their lives someday. He somehow had an intuition, had a sense of that when he was this kid in a garage. And so as I tell you the story of how it evolved, I think you'll take lots of lessons. One of the main lessons is finding something you believe, something you desperately want to accomplish, and then spending every day passionately trying to accomplish it. Steve was passionate from the day I met him. Even when he didn't know everything, he acted like he knew everything. He just believed so hard that anything he wanted to try and accomplish, he wanted to make happen. He could make happen. He looked at this technology, and he didn't want it to just be kind of a fun kind of thing to share with his other nerdy friends. He demanded from the day that they kind of started making it be real, that it become an idea and a product that could fit into people's lives. He understood the technology was now miniaturized down into a scale and a size where it could be made affordable and usable for people. But he saw the democratization of technology as being the huge breakthrough. The idea that everybody could have this technology that up until then was kind of only available to the huge companies that could have a mainframe computer in their basement, that now we could put this on people's desks and people could actually use it. He called it, one of his first notions was, he said it was like a bicycle for your mind. It was a way that people could do more, faster, and it was a tool to not just do work, but to do creative things, was always part of his vision. So he knew from day one that he wanted everybody in the world to use and have and use this technology. So here's one of the first ways that I kind of characterize his intuitive genius. And by the way, every day trust your intuition. Do not push your intuition aside and try and read a book about how you're supposed to go be successful in what you're trying to do. His intuition informed him every day, and his intuition right at the very beginning was, okay, I want everybody in the world to have this amazing technology, to be able to use it. And there's a bunch of kind of folklore around it. He was a hippie, he hung out in apple orchards and a commune, and that's where he got the idea to call the company Apple. There was another one where he was sitting around, he was eating an apple, and they had to have a name for their company to apply for a patent or something. So let's call it Apple. I don't know about any of the kind of mythology, but what I know for sure is intuitively he knew that he was going to create products, a tool that was going to be life-changing for the people he was making it for, and at the same time, it was going to be something nobody's ever seen before, nobody's ever touched before. It was technology. It was going to be scary. And so his first kind of marketing genius was, this company has to be called something likable and trustable and accessible. You know, what's kind of more simple and pure than an apple. So I think he intuitively said, Apple's the perfect name because it's not going to scare anybody. It's going to be this accessible, touchable, trustable name. The 24-year-old kid, he's got this box that, you know, does a little bit of computing, and he figures out to name it Apple because he knows someday everybody in the world's going to have something that he names. He also passionately started realizing that as he started working on the form factor, the design of his first computer, and he started having to put it in boxes, and he even started trying to figure out how to do some ads. He learned really quickly that everything he did was a message from this little company called Apple. So even before this new kind of huge interactive media space that we all live in today, he figured out that an ad wasn't just an ad in a magazine or a TV spot, that everything a little company or a medium-sized company or a big company does ends up being a form of communication, a form of advertising. So he was obsessive and a perfectionist about the packaging, of the design of the product, the color plastic that they would use for the first Apple computer. When we did an ad, he obsessed over every little detail of an ad. When we did a TV spot, he obsessed over, I don't know, that's not funny. I don't want to do that. I mean, he was guileless in terms of saying, no, it's not good. We'd always start meetings with showing them a few things and have to get past the, I hate that, what else you've got? I mean, it was almost automatic that you would start with, this is all crap, so that then we could start kind of working our way up the ladder of what was good enough, what was smart enough. So yes, he was passionate, he was obsessive, he was sometimes tyrannical. But the people who he trusted and the people who kind of believed that this guy really could see the future had the most amazing ride you could possibly imagine. He created the Macintosh, the mouse that we all use, the graphical interface that we all use. All of that was Macintosh. In 1983, and we launched it in 1984 on the Super Bowl with a commercial that Parker, thank you. Here's part of a little collection of work I'm going to share with you a little bit later. But here, again, here's this kid. He invents this computer that works like nothing's ever worked before. It does things that no computer's ever done before. It had typefaces in it, and it did graphical things. It didn't do them very well, but it did these things more than just word processing and some mathematical calc kind of programs. It also did these artistic things, which he believed from day one. It had to be a tool for people to be creative and imaginative and do interesting things. So he invents this, and then he turns to us and he says, "I want a commercial of that. This has got to be great. It's got to be can't be like anybody else's commercial. I hate commercials. Commercials suck. I want a commercial that doesn't look like a commercial. I want a commercial that, speaks to the world about, he wanted his passion embodied in this thing. He wanted to say, we're gonna kick the giant IBMs of the world in the butt, and we're going to democratize and hand this technology to the people, to everyone." And we did probably a more amazing commercial than we knew we could do on the basis of his product and inspiration. We launched Macintosh. A little story or tangent I usually go on when I talk about launching Macintosh was everything that we did to launch Macintosh in terms of media, in terms of putting the message out there, the filming, the editing, the production of the television commercial, the production of the print media, whether it was we had a 21-page insert, the individual print ads, the printing of the boxes, the way the photography was retouched, the way the type was set, and some of you are probably too young to remember, but back in those days, you actually printed out type on a piece of paper, glued it on a board, and then cut it to kind of move the type closer together to make it look better. It was all done in this kind of hard form. All those techniques, all those ways of cutting a film together, razor blade, tape, on a moviola, everything that we did to create the advertising to launch Macintosh is gone. It has disappeared because of Macintosh. Because of Macintosh, everything we do in the publishing, both film and print publishing business, is all done differently because of this technology. It became that creative tool that Steve dreamed it could be. It had typefaces in it. It allowed you to lay out and design and ultimately send things to press. It allows you now to, it's the most popular editing program in the world for editing films, editing television commercials, sound mixing, sound design. Everything is done with this technology that was launched that day in 1984. Now, here's maybe an interesting lesson. Here's this entrepreneur that all of a sudden, he was the kind of the darling of the business world. There's this young kid, or these two young kids, and they invented this technology. And kind of all full of someone, this big successful business guy, and I love having these ideas I need, you know, some kind of more sophisticated marketing help. So he had pretty good instincts. So maybe it was a good idea. Maybe he just picked the wrong person. But he went out and he hired this guy hired a soda pop salesman to run Apple. He hired this guy from Pepsi, who was supposedly this marketing whiz, because he's a big-time marketer. He sells stuff all over the world, even though sugar water, which is many of you maybe heard of this. His enticement to this guy to come to Apple was, what do you want to sell sugar water all your life, or do you want to change the world? So he invited this guy into his company. And his company became this big company with a board of directors and this CEO that came out of East Coast, proper tie, proper education, marketing, business training. And within a couple of years, this guy was the darling of the board of directors, and Steve was the wild hair, the crazy guy running around wanting to change the world. And this doesn't seem like prudent business practice to be running around trying to change the world. Because Steve spent money on whatever he thought he should spend money on, and wasn't being quite as cost effective as he could be. And the discipline started being applied to Apple. And after a few years, John Scully kind of stepped up and said, Steve, I think we're going to put you out in this Quonset hut, and you're going to invent stuff, and I'm going to run the company. And this broke Steve's heart. He was this guileless, intuitive, trusting, you know, I thought we were partners. He sold all his shares except one, and he walked away from Apple, the company that he was born out of his passion and his love for doing amazing stuff. And he kind of wandered around in the wilderness for a while. He created a thing called Next, which ended up being the operating system that now runs today's Apple products. But it was called Next then, and it was too expensive and it wasn't very successful. So then he kind of put his kind of genius and see into the future eye on this whole digital animation company called Pixar. He bought them. Told John Lasseter, a really creative guy who always wanted to be Walt Disney, he said, we don't have to make these stupid little short animated films. Let's go make a movie. And they kind of said, oh, okay. And they went and made a few movies. Every one of them a bigger hit than the last, the most successful movie studio that was ever created in Hollywood. They have never had a flop. Pixar ultimately was bought by Disney, and Steve and now his wife Lorraine is the biggest shareholder in Disney, and John Lasseter, the creative guy who always wanted to be Walt Disney, is now running Disney Animation. So it's one of those amazing side stories that I applaud and love. This was in his spare time when I was doing stuff. But I always knew he wanted to be back at Apple. I always knew that it was his first love, and I knew it. When I heard that the, I don't know, third or fourth or fifth CEO that was running Apple into the ground called Steve and wanted to buy the Next operating system, the operating system that he had developed for his Next computers. I called him up. I said, Steve, this is good. You're buying the operating system and you're going to get back into Apple and start doing something? He said, no, I don't think so. These guys are really dumb. I mean, they make so many stupid products and they don't know what they're doing. And I didn't believe him. But he said, no, I'm not going to work with those guys. Then he calls me one day in the car, like a month later, and he says, Lee, guess what? Emilio just resigned. Gilbert Emilio was the latest CEO that didn't know what he was doing. come up here? And we sat down in a room, and he said, you know, this company is almost out of business. It's on life support. It may not survive, but I want to try and give it a chance. Will you help me? And he put together a room of half a dozen people. He loved marketing communications. You know, Steve, I don't know if any of you have ever audited when he would do one of his keynote presentations where he'd kind of unveil a new product. But I always said Steve is kind of like P.T. Barnum. He loved, ta-da! You've all heard about the secrecy of Apple. Well, it's because he didn't want anyone to know what he was going to do till he pulled the sheet off. He wanted to do ta-da! And he started that day with a group of people in the room, and he said, we have to, every day, every week, do something to prove that we're not going out of business. That we still should, you know, the software developers were kind of thinking maybe we shouldn't write software for Macs anymore because their sales are going south. And the install base, which was always very loyal, finally started thinking, well, maybe I have to figure out how to use a Windows machine. It didn't look like it. Anyway, the first task was, how do we make it clear that we're not going out of business, that we still are a passionate company and believe in stuff? And we sat down and we did an advertising campaign called Think Different. We did it in a matter of weeks. And it was, I'll share some of that with you as well, celebration of genius, celebration of the people who changed the world. We called them the crazy ones, the rebels, the entrepreneurs, probably most of you ladies in this room, the passionate ones who dare to believe that they can do something that's never been done before. And it was another one of those Apple gestures that got strange reviews. Lots of people saying, oh man, those guys, what are they smoking? They're going out of business and they're doing ads about a bunch of dead people. What is this? Those people never even used computers. As you may recall, or you're going to see in a minute, it was Albert Einstein and Pablo Picasso, Frank Lloyd Wright, Amelia Earhart, kind of interesting people that did famous stuff. But a lot of people couldn't figure out what that had to do with Apple computer. But it was the first brave gesture that kind of got people's attention. Then they did an iMac. At the bulge of the internet boom, people wanted a simple little computer to go on the internet, people that weren't real computer savvy. They did the iMac. Steve threw out 3/4 of the products they were making at Apple and just kept the laptops, created the iMac, and then the Big Mac for professional use. His intuition just started clicking on all cylinders. So it's like, we need this small, usable little computer for the internet, which was iMac. Then, I'll kind of fast forward because I'm going to share it with you visually. iMac got them back in business. iMac got Apple back on people's minds. But young people had kind of lost sight of Apple in the years that they had fumbled around and made mistakes and didn't know what they were doing. And Steve looked at an MP3 player because he knew digital music was going to be real, was real. But the way MP3 players worked is you kind of downloaded it from your CDs. There was no place to buy digital music. People were stealing music, which kind of went against Steve's conscience or notion of how the world should work. So he had the guy made Sony into a giant kind of world brand. After World War II, they were named something like All Nippon Electronics Company or something like that. He changed the name of the company to Sony, which is kind of like Sunny, which is kind of this bright, nice name. So maybe that's where a little bit of his intuition about calling Apple Apple came from. And the great story of kind of entrepreneurial genius is Marita was miniaturizing everything. That was in the 50s, if you remember. Most of you probably remember. Transistor radios were like, whoa, look at how small that is. Making stuff small, and he had a room full of people working on making a little tiny tape recorder. And one day he walked into the lab where they were working on these tape recorders, which were supposed to be really small and still be able to kind of record voices and stuff like that. But everybody in the room was kind of all together, so they were using earphones so they could all work on their individual little devices without disturbing the guy next to them. And he looked at that and he said, He had somebody put some of his favorite music on a little cassette and he stuck it in one of these miniature tape recorders these guys were working on. He put the earphones on. And he went out and he walked around Tokyo. And he came back and he said, "What now?" That's what I think. So I'm not sure that Steve really admired Marita because he was a technologist, but he was also a marketing genius in terms of Walkman, Sony. So I'm not sure Steve loved music, but doing the MP3 player, I'm not sure wasn't partly inspired by the Walkman. Sony should have done the Walkman. Sony became this big stupid company that couldn't figure out how to do the iPod, even though it invented the Walkman. That's what happens when don't become too big a company. That's one of my warnings. Become big enough so you're happy, but not so big that you become stupid. I'm going to show it. All right, I got to show my real laptop. Please. All that. Well, I thought you said I had it now. All right. So anyway, invented the iPod, invented the iPhone, invented the iPad. Did the iPhone and the iPad while he was dying, by the way. And all with this passion and this intensity that everything you do has to be great, has to be perfect. And it built this company that I want to kind of share with you in a little collage of the work we did for them. And then I have one special piece at the end. So, Tom says show the reel.
It is now 1984. It appears IBM wants it all. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? The entire information age? Was George Orwell right about 1984?
We celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification methods. For the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of any constituted force. Communication, of course, is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people. One resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall draw themselves together and be divided with their own compulsion. We shall prevail.
On January 24, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 Introducing Macintosh. It does all the things you'd expect a personal computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a personal computer to do. And it does some things no other computer has ever done before. Of course, to do all this, you will have to learn to do this. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us.
But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. Love, love, love.
I was writing paper on the PC, and it was like beep, 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 and then like half of my paper was gone.
You know, it's like being stuck in a bad relationship.
All PC users know the blue screen of death.
I'm a Windows guy who's changed to Macintosh, yeah. It really did seem like a light at the end of a dark tunnel.
Record all my sounds on there. I could see it all. Just arrange it. It's like a tape recorder that you can see and splice things together.
I'm Ellen Tice, and I'm a student.
I'm Yo-Yo Ma, and I play the cello.
My name is S. Claus, and I'm a switcher.
Tell me how to comfort because you look so fine that I really want to make you mine. You look so fine that I really want to make you mine. 4, 5, 6, come on and get your kicks. Now you don't need the money when you look like that, do you, honey?
Hello, I'm a Mac. And I'm a PC. Hello, I'm a Mac.
I'm PC.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm free pizza.
Yeah, it's just doers, okay? Mac is issued a salutation, cancel or allow. Allow.
Hi, I'm a Mac Homie.
What about yours, PC?
Please.
Okay, sure. What's up? PC home movie.
You never saw me. Never saw who.
It's not gonna have any of the problems Windows do have. Trust me.
Customer care!
They're leaving me for man.
I think I'm gonna crash.
Hey, if you feel it, that'll help.
Hey mama, it's that beat that make you move, mama. Get on the floor and move with me, mama. We the last masterclass in a control. Make you move your booty. Shake that thing on the city of Sinan. Hey shorty, I know you wanna party. I know your body looking for me, really feel naughty.
Hello? Yo, yo.
Remind me to get milk when I leave work.
Tell my wife I'm gonna make it.
Do you think it'll snow today?
It sure looks like snow today.
It's in Apple's DNA that technology alone is not enough. That it's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the result that makes our hearts sing.
This is what we believe. Technology alone is not enough. Faster, thinner, lighter, those are all good things. But when when technology gets out of the way, everything becomes more delightful, even magical. That's when you leap forward. That's when you end up with something like this.
He knew it was more than technology when he was a kid in a garage. He knew it was going to change the world. And he trusted his entrepreneurial instincts till the day he died. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with is something that's personally very special to me. When we came back and when Steve needed something to buy him some time to invent some new products, we did the Think Different campaign. And we wrote this commercial together. It was quite an intense project. The words were all written and rewritten. They were very special. And the celebration of these people who changed the world were something that Steve felt represented his values and the company's values as they reemerged as the new Apple. So this commercial was incredibly important to Steve. It was going to run on Toy Story as the first Disney movie on TV in many years. Had a lot of emotional significance. We had a lot of people read the script. Maya Angelou, Robin Williams, Richard Dreyfuss ended up reading the script. He was an Apple lover. And I had Steve read the script as well, because he believed that he cared so much about, as I knew for all those years, about Apple and about this rebirth. So he read it with amazing emotion, amazing conviction. So I asked him, when we had to ship it, I said, I want your version, your voice to be on the commercial when it runs. And he was, I don't know, let's send them both and I'll call you in the morning. And he calls in the morning. He says, Lee, we gotta run the version with Richard Dreyfuss on it. Because this is about saving Apple. And if people think it's about me, they think it's about my ego, we're going to have made the biggest mistake we could ever make. And I'm sitting there on the phone, quite disappointed that, goddamn it, he's right again. Anyway, this is a salute to all of you, all you crazy people who have the passion to try and do something great. And so listen to the words as spoken by Steve Jobs. Here's to the crazy ones.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones